My name is Jennifer Stirling-Campbell, and I'm now offering a free 20-minute one-on-one session exclusively for my newsletter subscribers. Sign up at overcomedepressionpodcast.com and quick start your healing journey today.
I wanted to be the exact opposite. I knew that deep down inside that they were doing wrong. I watched my mom beat my grandmother right after the shooting. And this is the same mom that tried to take me to church, that married a child molester. My biological father just wasn't around. But that brings me to the story of my faith, you know.
Welcome to the Overcome Depression podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, my good friend David Curfiss. Hello, David.
Buddy. Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited about this interview because when I first met you, it was on your podcast. You invited me and we talked about depression and overcoming and music on your podcast, Melomaniacs. That was what it was called, right? We Are Melomaniacs.
It was called We Are Melomaniacs.
We Are Melomaniacs. Yeah. And you were a very staunch agnostic, very stubbornly agnostic. And I was very much the opposite. And so we had this amazing conversation where I talked from kind of a faith-based perspective and you talked from more science and logic. And it was such a good conversation. Honestly, probably my best interview I've ever done and one of the funnest. And here we are. I don't know how long has it been? At least a year.
Probably going on a year and a half now. You were one of my first interviews. I was still brand new. I didn't even have a headphone and mic set up back then. I had actually reached out to you to get to your sister and you declined her and allowed me to have you on, which was awesome because I was so hesitant to have somebody on with faith when I knew that the hardcore metal, black metal scene was so, well, how can I put this? Anti-Semitic, anti-politics, and just anti-everything. So it was like, okay, am I going outside my niche here? But we had an amazing conversation that did very well. It was funny because our podcast episodes started populating on people's TVs, and I was getting phone calls from people be like, bro, you're on my TV. YouTube was actually recommending our podcast, which you're one of the few podcasts that I ever put out there that allowed me to promote. I did enjoy those podcast days. Those are some good memories. I did like 74 interviews with musicians and artists of all types. It was one of the best years and a half of my life. And I really got to figure out who I am in that process and what I'm good at.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it was part of your healing journey. I was led to you. I feel like that connection was valuable. I value this connection that we made and your friendship. So a year and a half later, you are now no longer agnostic.
Nope.
And you're off all of the medications you were taking at the time.
Yes.
And you're in the middle, I would say. Is that honest to say you're kind of in the middle still of this healing journey?
Yeah, I'm at the beginning.
You're at the beginning.
It feels very early. It feels very like the infant stages because there's so many questions I have unanswered and there's so much I'm trying to work through. And I have a lot of trauma. And
sure.
A lot of the reason I didn't believe in religion and God and the story of Jesus and faith was because of my upbringing. I was mentally abused by the church I was taken to. I was mentally abused by my family, which to this day still sounds weird to me. I don't know another word to describe it because as a child, that was my family. So I've learned that I was kind of acclimated into this very traumatic upbringing. I mean, until recently, one of my earliest memories was of my dad trying to kidnap me and my sister who was newborn after finding my mom had cheated on him, like caught her in the act of cheating. And he came to her work after getting loaded on cocaine and booze and shot the guy who she was cheating with, which was actually my younger brother's dad. Didn't kill him, but that was like my longest memory. I couldn't get past that. I couldn't move to another part of my life. There were good memories there that I haven't been able to access until recently. And some of it is coming off the meds. Some of it is accepting my trauma. A chunk of it, admittedly, is finding God and faith and understanding the universe better. And the biggest thing is having a little self-compassion for myself, something I've never done. I put my needs first, and I don't mean that, I mean, it's selfish to a degree, but I'm not disowning my family or anything. I'm putting my needs first to make sure I'm a better human being, a better father, a better brother, sister, just a better person. But there's a lot of things I had to go through to get here, and I'm still going through it. And I don't understand a lot of it. But what I do understand is I was raised Southern Baptist Christian, and I hated the church. I hated the church so much that I am covered in anti-God, anti-religious tattoos. I have burning Bibles on my arm. I have a burning church on my arm. I have a zombie Jesus. It was an astonishing upbringing when I think about it. And only recently have I learned to be compassionate toward myself, which younger Dave would have laughed at me. Like, I would look at me like, dude, you woo-hoo.
Kids, though, it's ingrained in a child to idolize their parents, which is why when a couple gets divorced, they make such a big deal about not talking bad about the other parent, because when a child believes their parents are crap, they start believing that they are crap. Additionally, if you're a child and those things are happening to you, naturally, what the child will do is blame themselves. This must be my fault. My parents are good, so I must be doing something wrong to deserve this. It's a weird thing that goes on, and I'm sure there's reasons for it. But in the case of trauma, you can kind of get trapped in that age and not be able to move forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's what happened to me, essentially. Like, I never really grew up mentally. Well, I did. I matured. I learned. I absorbed the world around me and the experiences, which only furthered the trauma, because life is a hard son of a... And I put myself in significant danger my entire life, trying to prove to my younger self that I was the man I thought I could be. And it's weird because I did not idolize my parents. I saw them as parents. I loved them, but I didn't idolize them. I actually, when I saw them, I wanted to be the exact opposites. And I knew that deep down inside that they were doing wrong. Like, I watched my mom beat my grandmother in a parking lot of McDonald's over a custody issue right after the shooting. I got kidnapped from school in second or first grade, drove in a parking lot in circles with my aunt on my dad's side and my grandmother in the other car screaming. Like, imagine two cars, and I remember it vividly, two cars going in circles, front to front in circles, in the school parking lot, mind you, as my mom's jamming out of there to get me away, only to get to the apartment 30 minutes away and watch them fight. Because my grandmother only wanted to give me a jacket, but because it was coming from that family, my mom wanted nothing to do with it. And this is the same mom that tried to take me to church, that married a child molester. And to be clear, I was not molested, but he was a child molester. My biological father just wasn't around. But that brings me to the story of my faith. I spent my entire young life, my teen years, my middle years, without a dad. My stepfather had moments, but I didn't have a dad. I never had a male figure in my life that was of good quality by society standards. But there were males in my life that I looked up to.
Any standard, I think the most important thing that a child needs is just to feel seen and loved.
Yeah, it didn't happen for me.
And if those things aren't there, nothing else really matters, whether it's you have all the things a child could ever want in terms of toys or gadgets. It just doesn't.
So I lived in Section 8 housing. We never had food. We were lucky if we had water running. We used to joke, my buddy Joey, who lived behind me, he also had a very traumatic life. He watched his younger brother drown. Joey was
so sad.
Joey was a good kid. The people I surrounded myself were a lot like me. We're all walking contradictions. Like, we're good, but people see us and go, oh, stay away from that person. But yet, they're some of the best people in the world, and yet the people that are supposedly of good standards are some of the worst people I've ever worked with. I've never been beat and broken as bad as I was by the people who should have been looked up to, the professionals of the world. The best love and affection I got were from drug addicts and violent people on the streets. These were my friends. These were my family. I saw more love and affection from one of my stepdad's best friends than I did my mom and my stepdad at the time. And this guy was also a child molester. He hung himself in the shed across the street after getting caught. And I remember the cops showed up to my house looking for him once. And these are supposed to be the people that are supposed to nurture me. And here they are forcing me to go to church, forcing me to read the Bible, putting me in Sunday school, where I was getting picked on by the students and the teachers because I smelled like smoke, clothes. My parents were drug addicts, alcoholics, felons. They brought a pastor over to the house. We were living at my stepdad's mother's house in Dale City, Virginia. And I was a very playful, happy-go-lucky, energetic child. I didn't sleep, but I was always into adventures and I always had fun. I liked to go through doors like I was Indiana Jones. And I walked into my parents' room one time, which actually ended up becoming my bedroom later on. We rotated rooms so much. But anyways, I walked into the room and I kind of rolled in like, hey, and there they are praying with the pastor from the church. And the pastor looks at me and goes, get out of here. God doesn't want you here.
No, that's
So
not a good pastor.
no, I went through phases where I thought I was worthless. I started skipping school. I never experimented with drugs and alcohol. I was a straight edge kid. Honestly, it was the Navy that got me into alcohol. It was a journey. I left home only to find myself in a harder world without faith. And I was adamantly atheist in the early days. Dude, it was written on my face. And I kept that for years. And people always told me, Curfiss, you have such an attitude. Of course I have an attitude. You treat me like the scrawny dog in the corner with fleas that bite you every time you walk over to it, you know? I mean, yeah, no wonder you guys called me a pit bull. I snapped because everything you did to me was belittling me, telling me I was worthless, telling me I wasn't of value, telling me that I will never amount. And this is when I'm in the Navy, you know? Then I further myself some more. I keep using my experiences and I keep looking back at my childhood and I go, this is what I'm not going to do. And I drove myself forward. I propelled myself forward. But I wasn't being true to myself. I was not propelling myself forward in a direction that I wanted. I was propelling myself in the direction that I thought would gain the value of other people. I wanted to be seen, just like you said. Up until a couple weeks ago, just before you reached out to me, I didn't feel seen. And it wasn't you reaching out to me. I think we reconnected because I opened up. And I opened up out of desperation. And if there's a non-believer watching this just to poo-poo on it, because that's what trolls do, I've always believed in free will. I've always believed in the pursuit of happiness. And I may not have done that for myself, but I believed in it for everyone else. I wanted everyone else to have the happy lives. But I needed to be seen as more than I really was. That's why I went into the Navy to become a Navy SEAL. That's why I went into customs to become an agent. That's why I went into the Marshal Service to become an operator. I got more than I wished for. I had the easiest way to summarize my career was I have never, ever worked so hard to be so let down. The world let me down just like my parents did. And I ended up medically separating from the Marshal Service a year ago. March 7th was the date of my incident. I had a full mental breakdown. I wanted to die. And I had never been suicidal so much. Well, I mean, I had had suicidal ideations for years. I kept them to myself. I'd only had one close call with suicide right after my best friend died. And before my lethal use of forces with the Marshal Service, I had been in fights and less lethal encounters and just a lot. And then I finally saw the harder side of the job and was involved in back-to-back shootings, one of which I wasn't a shooter, I was shot at. And the agency downplayed the shooting so bad, they didn't even have the response teams come out to check on us. They're like, oh, you know what, you guys didn't shoot, so it's all good. I mean, I made an entry and the dude was dead when I got in there. He blew his brains out after taking hostages and shot at us 3 times. You know, say what you want to me, but that's a shooting. A year, almost the day later, I got into another shooting where I was almost killed. I have a photo of me afterwards. I got drunk, didn't solve anything. I kept going. Went to work. Never had faith though. And it's kind of hard to have faith when you've been told you're not of value and the church itself let you down. I ended up reaching out to a friend of mine in the agency to get help. It's been 11 years now. One of my best friends had just died. We never found his body. He was in the ocean. He was a Navy SEAL. Killed in training. Dedicated my last book to him. talking about it is still kind of, I'm like defending myself when I shouldn't be. I reached out to somebody at the agency that had his own fair share of circumstances. I did look up to him. He was kind of the guy that I always wanted to be. He was one of a few dudes in the agency who treated me amazingly. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make it anywhere in the agency because they were like me. But he had faith. And I reached out to him and he helped me the only way he knew how. He had recommended his church. He loved his church. So I went to his church. I took the wife and we went to the church. And the first thing I heard was the music. And I immediately had a panic attack. I had to step out. The music reminded me of being 11-year-old Dave again when I was baptized by that pastor who told me to get out of the room. And I wanted to explode. I stepped out. My wife stayed in. I went outside the room and I could kind of hear the music in the background, but this guy walks up to me and he goes, "You look like you need help." I go, "Yeah, I do." And we had this conversation and he was just such a nice, genuine guy. And he looked like me, man. He had tattoos. He was wearing loose-fitting jeans and boots. Like, he's the kind of guy that at that time I could have seen myself going to a bonfire and having a whiskey with. Like, he was cool. That was the pastor.
That was the pastor?
That was the pastor. So I walked back in and listened, but the problem was the anxiety had already hit. I couldn't deal with it, and I started having a breakdown. I told the wife, "We got to go." I ran out of that church. And I didn't do anything for my faith for another 10 years. And that actually gets us to where we are today. So I've been struggling with my mental health for years. I denied it. I wanted nothing to do with accepting the fact that I had PTSD. I knew I was anxious. I knew I had depression, but I could write those off mentally. I knew everyone kind of suffered from anxiety, depression. I might even have some OCD in there, ADHD, who knows, honestly. Like, we can't really truly classify ourselves based on mental health. It's too dynamic and it's kind of supernatural in a way. We just don't understand the brain enough. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm all these different things like people like to do. But I've been diagnosed with anxiety. I've been diagnosed with depression, and I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD.
But the diagnosis is not you. And you know that now.
No. It's a tool to get you to where you need. It's like, okay, this is what we think. This is how we should probably go about treating it. First off, I don't like Western medicine. I'm not a big fan of Big Pharma. I had to eat words and go on pharmaceuticals because last year got bad. I tried to get help. I was having panic attacks, keeping it to myself. I wasn't disclosing it to anyone at the job. I was in a small office. They didn't like me. I had one friend in the office. My other friend left. People were talking behind my back. The upper management wanted me fired. They thought I was up to no good. I was having mental health issues. I'd been in multiple encounters. I don't know how I survived. And then it occurred to me one day after having my dad up here that I don't know how I survived. I was being looked after. Like, it's not a coincidence that spirits intervene. It's not a coincidence that our God intervened. And I'm going to talk on the God thing here in a minute because there's still
I completely agree. There's definitely times in my life that I would not have survived either.
It's hard.
And I see the way that children, even just basic thing like children playing, playgrounds. There's about 1 million ways a child could fall to their death on a playground.
Yes.
And yet, and I'm sure it has happened, but it doesn't happen very often. Or just how rough kids are with their infant siblings. They should accidentally kill them sometimes, but that doesn't usually happen. So I just think there's more intervention that most of us can possibly know or understand, and that's where the faith comes in. But even my faith, especially when I was depressed, I did not understand the depth and the breadth and just how much I was being looked after until I started healing. Yeah. And part of that healing required that sight.
It did.
To see that I am here. I've been here the whole time. And it's all of the time. But it's something that every person who wants to overcome mental illness has to surrender to, is this idea that you are not alone. You're not doing it all by yourself. All these accomplishments you think that are you, you couldn't have done that by yourself. And the fact that you're still alive isn't because of you either. And so it's kind of that humility, but also that awe of, I have so much support. I have so much love. And if I let it in, I can do anything, anything, and everything that I ever wanted when it's in alignment, of course. The light will never give you everything that your carnal self wants, but the things that you really, really, really desire, which are peace, love. I think it kind of breaks down to those two things. Every person wants that, whether they realize it or not.
You say surrender. I don't see it as surrendering. I don't see myself as a religious person because I'm not, but I have faith. I have faith in God. I've read the Bible at least through Judges. I really wanted to read the whole thing, and I was reading it when I was going through my medical retirement. I had read some papers, I called them the Betrayal letters, and this is the first time I've talked about this. After my mental breakdown at work, on the job, I went home. I was taken home by a coworker. And of course, my boss at the time, he had everyone in the office, people that didn't know what happened, people that had no business knowing what happened, write statements about my mental health. To include somebody that was a contract employee that had no business having any input on my mental health. And that guy wrote a 3-page paper on my mental health based on private conversations we had. He even wrote in the paperwork, I promised Curfiss I wouldn't say anything, but this is what he said. It's like, where's the value in human relationships if you're going to take things I told you in private knowing they could be used against me, but trusting you to keep them to yourself when I thought you had my best interest in mind?
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of people surrounding you who lacked integrity.
They did. No one had integrity. Except for one guy. One guy. He had integrity. His is the only letter that mattered to me because his is the letter that it was truthful. It was factual. It was objective. A lot of them wrote lies. Some of them did just paint a picture about me. And that was hard to read because I was like, I do look like a crazy man because those were things I did. But some of it was just them searching for reasons to belittle me. They threatened me, said I was doing fraud and stole government property and I lied. And it's like, God damn, guys, like, excuse me, still an old habit. Excuse me. Like, it's somebody on the other side's like, oh, he just said that. My dad will kick my every time he hears me say that. And yes, our relationship is stronger than ever, which is awesome.
And this is your biological
My
dad?
biological, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to die. I spent 27 years of my life serving to this country. I was on 3 deployments overseas, one of which was devastating. I lost a lot of good friends. And that was honestly the first time I really understood mortality. Even though I knew people who had died, I've had a lot of people in my life die by their own hand. And then here I am. I was ready to kill myself. Now, this is the part. So if anyone listening to this is sensitive to suicide, guns, this is not your part. So yeah. I lost it. I could not deal with it anymore. I wasn't sleeping. Hijacked. My brain was hijacked by thoughts. I thought I lost everything. And it wasn't because I was leaving the agency. It was because they were attacking me warrantlessly based on my boss's personal disliking toward me. It was bad.
But it's devastating.
It was devastating.
I can imagine that would keep me up at night.
It was.
That would be very hard.
I went 10 days a year ago. February 19th, I went 10 days without consistent sleep. I was pacing, and then one night, I was in my bedroom, and I was literally just contemplating the value of my life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. I knew I couldn't go back to the job, but I ended up going back to the job for a couple days before I had the full breakdown a couple days later. I was lying to myself, and that was part of the trauma. And that was what I think threw the agency off, if I'm being totally honest here. I don't know. It's hard to say because I'm trying to project what they were thinking when they're looking at me through a much different lens than I'm using right now. But to be fair, I just think they didn't understand what was happening to me and why. But they didn't need to. They just needed to show support, and they did. They did the opposite. They made my life hell. Yeah. And by them doing that...
I'm sure there was an aspect of that that's probably scared them, that they weren't comfortable with, and and even from the time we're children, if you watch kids on a playground, if there's a child who's acting strange or not playing not sharing, not playing
Yeah.
night, whatever it is. It's just they're not getting along well with the group. You can watch them and how cruel. They will ostracize the child. They will build walls with their bodies.
Yeah.
They will push them out of the group. It's horrifying to watch, even when it's children. And adults do this too. Yes, it's primitive. It's not based in love. It's based in fear and survival.
It's a defense
And
mechanism.
it can be so cruel. It's been hard for me to watch my entire life. I've never enjoyed watching children be cruel to other children, adults bully other adults, adults bully children. And yet some of the most traumatic experiences I have had, short of mine, was watching other people get bullied and feeling like I couldn't do anything or that no one would listen to me and I couldn't stop it. So even vicariously living through those things is hard enough, let alone being the target of that kind of abuse.
Yeah. It's different. I had never understood the term agency betrayal until it happened to me. And oh my, did it happen to me. And one night I couldn't do it anymore and I said, I'm done. I grabbed my gun. I made sure it was still loaded because I never take the rounds out of my gun. I always keep a mag in and a round in the chamber because in my head, I know what my safety is. I'm going to steal something from Black Hawk Down. This is my safety. Like, I love that movie. One of my buddies was out there during that incident. He was a Marine. He's got problems too. I've helped him. Anyways, it's easy for me to get distracted. I'm still navigating my
No, it's
my
okay.
emotions
We
and
think
being
a lot
comfortable
alike.
with a lot of this. So I grabbed my gun. I walked out of the house. I didn't say anything to my wife sitting on the couch. I didn't say anything to my son playing video games. I didn't say anything to my daughter watching TV. And I left. And I went to a bridge that I had gone to with my daughter just the day before. And I took a photo of myself. It was going to be the last photo I ever took. The gun was in my other hand. You could see my shoulders slouched down. You look at the photo, you could see the depression on my face. I put the gun to my head and I started screaming. I had a Lieutenant Dan moment. I was screaming, "Come on, God. Show me one reason not to kill myself." And I called for God. I did. And this is why I ended up reaching out to my dad. I called to God. I said, "Give me one. Just one." And I looked down and there was a flower on the rock. My daughter had been there the day before with me and she'd put 2 flowers on the rock. One of them washed away was me. So I broke the gun down and I went home and told the wife. I called my dad and I said, "I need help. I don't know how to do this without you." I didn't think he was going to come up because he'd never been there for me in my life, and he did. He drove up the next day. And this is where it gets good. It hasn't even gotten good yet. It had snowed so much, and my dad he's just like me. He's a little kid. And we went out to the mountains, and we hiked to this ancient spring. It's historic. There's legends about this spring bringing goodwill to people. Mind you, there's 2.5, 3 feet of snow on the ground. And we're just walking through it. Probably like a mile up the mountain. But my dad did not care. I didn't care. It was a beautiful day. The clouds were out. Like, it was just a gorgeous day. And I get to the spring and you can see the water bubbling up through the ice. I said, "I don't think there's any time like the present. Show me how this works." Mind you, the clouds are out. There's no sun. I'm in the woods. He starts to pray. He says, "God, show me the light." And what happens? Clouds part and the sun shines on me. Like, what are the odds? Like, how does that happen, you know?
That's amazing.
So I took a drink of the spring, which I always do when I go up there, just because I'm a little hippie inside too. And I knew at that moment, I was like, okay. And the only way I could get over some of the roadblocks I had regarding Christ and God and the trauma that still sits in me with religion is I had to remind myself that God's not meant to be understood by the human mind. He made a conduit for us through Jesus that you can look at it and say it's solely fake. Sure, whatever. Easy to assume because it doesn't fit within the realm of humanity. It doesn't fit within the conscious mind and the natural world. And we're never going to understand it. We're never going to see what we want to see scientifically to prove God exists.
Well, and I don't think it would matter even if science could, because there's some pretty amazing things coming out that are pretty convincing. The shawl of Turin, they're saying, was Christ's burial cloth that's been passed down generationally. But even people of faith are discounting these scientific findings. People, if they don't want to believe something, it doesn't matter how much proof you give them, they're going to find an excuse why they shouldn't or why they don't want to. And I want to just interject a little bit. I hear what you're saying. You're not necessarily wrong, because I think that God will stop talking to us when we're not listening. But I think that when you're ready and willing to hear, the truth can be hard, because when you know that it's true, it requires change. If you didn't realize that you had to change and start taking accountability for the things that you realize are true, it tears you up. Like you can't not respond to truth. And so I think a lot of us resist truth because we're not ready to hear it. But I do believe that God speaks to us either through angels, through Christ, or directly in some cases. I don't think it's as common to most of us as it is angels, Jesus Christ.
I haven't experienced anyone in my life that has had those kind of conversations directly with God, and I'm not sure my human brain
I've only
would
heard
fathom
of
it.
2.
I don't know if it would resonate with me. I'd probably discount it, to be quite honest. And the reason I say he stopped talking to us is because I only got through Judges in the Bible. I had to put it down because I knew that the book wasn't going anywhere, and I knew that he wasn't going anywhere, and I knew that my beliefs weren't going to change for the worse because I completely disowned him, and he still looked out for me, and he hadn't been looking out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was such a science-based person, and I'm starting to look at science like, are you kidding me? Like, there's so many things in science that we turn back around and go, well, we were wrong.
Right.
Like negative time.
It's a constant theory in testing.
Yeah.
I mean, if people say, look to the science, they say, consider the science. It's important to consider the science, but often it will disprove itself because variables in play weren't, either it was biased to begin with, or things were not accounted for. It was this population, but when you test this population, it's different for some strange reason. So it's always evolving and changing. Whereas God, like the truth is the truth is the truth. It's light, it's love, it's peace. It cannot be discounted. And peace is the one piece, P-I-E-C-E, of the equation that evil cannot mimic. It can mimic lots of things, but it cannot mimic that.
No, it can't. And that was holding me back a lot. I needed that proof. Once I figured out that the proof wasn't scientific based, but heart based, it allowed me to open up, and I was actually able to start healing. And it wasn't the cure all. I wanted it to be the cure all. And I think a lot of us do, just like why we take meds or why we look for the fast pill to make us, slim down or bulk up or fix this and fix that. I mean, I'm just going to take this and I'm fixed. No, man, it comes from inside, and you have to be open to it. We're
it's a
naturally
journey.
Resistance. It is.
And it's a journey of learning how to stop resisting too. I mean, that is the biggest deterrent. Like, how long do you want this to take? It's pretty much how hard are you pushing back is the question. And it's not an easy thing to tear down that wall.
Mind, body, and soul. It's huge. They're connected. I know plenty of atheists who still ask me how my soul's doing. And they see it from a different perspective. In their head, the universe isn't God. Fine, cool. That's your belief. I'm okay with that. And I think we should all be, but it's not going to happen because part of the balance is having different opinions and different views and not agreeing. If everyone agreed, I think we would crumble further. We'd all be a bunch of conformists who didn't individualize. And
we wouldn't have to think. Wouldn't have to think because we'd all be the same.
There's no way to get through life without the balance of good, evil, so on and so forth. And we just have to accept that life is flawed. We live, we die. Make the best of it.
Or rather, life was designed for learning, and only learning can occur when you're experiencing opposites, and you know the difference.
Life, in my opinion, has one purpose, and that is to continue life. That's it. That's all I see.
That's actually a really cool perspective. I really appreciate that.
Glad I could throw it in there for you. We spend too much time searching for meaning in things. since I have opened up my brain for starters, and my heart for that matter, because I closed both off years ago. I think I first closed everything off when I was 4. But when I came off the meds, it took a while. I had some crazy downs. I was able to overcome it because in my head, I was like, okay, this is not me. This is just the drugs wearing off. It's trying to get me to go back on the drugs. And I was really happy that my psychiatrist wasn't opposed to me coming off. You can't go through this life without support. You
Right.
can't. Which is why when I think you see people who have been ostracized and they look like outcasts, it's setting them up for failure.
Oh,
We
yeah.
need people
The
like
number one thing you need, that every single one of us needs, is connection. And I believe very strongly that the forces of evil want nothing more than to make you feel alone, because they can manipulate you so much easier when you feel alone. You're incredibly right about that.
So I'm glad you said that, because here's something I used to talk about on almost every podcast. There is nothing worse than having a wife who you love and loves you unconditionally. And I mean unconditionally. And I say that comfortably because I've been married to an ex. I don't even know if that's proper English. I was once married and I have an ex. No kids with her, thankfully. And I have 2 kids now. To say I was numb and detached is an understatement. I did not feel physically or emotionally any connection anytime I was touched or talked to for years.
Yeah, I've been there.
It sucks,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
not
it
being able
sucks.
to experience joy
When you want
you
to,
watch.
and you
Yes.
don't know what's wrong with you, why, I don't know why I'm this like this, and you can see the pain that the other person is going through because you can't give them that.
I think I have created more trauma for my kids than I ever really wanted to by trying not to create trauma.
Sure.
I should have just embraced life for what it was, but I couldn't because I had this unreal amount of brain fog that I only recently was able to cut through. And it's still weird saying some of this stuff because I would have laughed at people for this a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago. Like it's when I came off the meds and I accepted I will never truly understand God. At least that's my opinion. I was able to start attacking trauma points in my brain. And what I started doing was texting, and I made sure she was okay with this. Instead of journaling, texting my trauma coach as I was feeling things. She was totally cool with this. I'm like, thank you. I'm calling this my journal, because when I tried to write in a journal, I couldn't just write my emotions and how I was feeling and my beliefs. I think
When
it
you
felt
kind of have to go
fake.
get the journal and
Yeah.
make sure you have a place to write it. Like, a phone, it's always pretty much with us. You can grab and go, right?
It wasn't even that. It was more of the connection. There was no connection with the paper.
There's a person on the other side of this text.
Like
Yeah.
the paper's paper. Like when I started writing, I used to write in middle school. I wrote my first apocalyptic story in 8th grade. Published it anyways. I published an apocalyptic story about a nuclear holocaust in 8th grade. I actually still have the book in the bookshelf. My daughter loves it. I found that by texting, 1, I was getting a dopamine hit. Human connection.
Right.
2, I was getting response. I was getting interaction. I was getting talked to. We look for that in everything we do. That's, why people go to church. That's why they pray. They want that connection to God. Well, we're human. We need human connection in all forms. And this was a very intimate thing I'm doing. I'm opening up to a person on a phone about things I don't even truly understand about myself as I'm learning them, as I'm discovering these things. And I had this breakthrough one day. It was magical. And I still found myself wanting to have that instantaneous cure-all where I'm just like, la, 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 no more anxiety, no, that doesn't happen that way. Like,
Bing.
It doesn't work. Like, you don't get a doorbell and it doesn't go, bing, your freedom has been delivered. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. No magic wand.
No, this is
Not
my life.
in most cases. I have heard of instantaneous healing, but
Well,
it's not very common.
let's look at this from a realist perspective here. If we focused our life around being the exception, which we almost all do, I did. I did it with my writing. I did it with my career choices. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I was planning on being the exception. I was the exception, though. I just wasn't the exception in the way I thought. And we're all exceptional at something. It's just for me, I wasn't the exception for becoming a SEAL. I could have, but they all died. And then I chose a different path, you know? And then I kept looking for these outs, these magic cure-alls for my discomfort. Life to me was an adventure. And then it stopped becoming an adventure and it became a job. And then it became hell. And that's the only way to describe it. Hell. I hate saying Satan, hell, and demons.
Well, I think I share a similar thread with you there, because I think outer darkness is a place. I don't think hell is as much. I think it's more of a state of being. It can feel like a place because you're in it, but I don't necessarily feel like it's somewhere where you're sent to. It's a place that you end up in because of choices that were made, not just by you, but by others. Ultimately, though, it's us who chooses to believe the lies we were taught. Innocently, of course, for most of the time. But that hell is very real, and it can be experienced here. And I've felt that as well.
So this is where a lot of my views differ from people, especially in the world of religion and faith. And I think this has a lot to do with my past, and it has a lot to do with where I am in my adventure. I'm calling it an adventure because Journey doesn't even describe this. Like every day, it's something new. But mostly, it's mostly good. But there's bad in there. There's a lot of hardship, overcoming trauma, and
challenge.
Understanding things. Yes, challenge.
Definitely challenge.
Before I go into that story, and this is where my belief system varies from others, especially the very righteous Christians out there. And it does not change with my father. And I give him a lot of respect because as much of a God-fearing man that he is, he doesn't view himself as a religious person. He does not like the church. He had similar issues that I did, and he hates that I had those because he admitted that when he had me, his goal was to protect me. My middle name is Elijah, and he did that because he wanted me protected the way Elijah was protected in the Bible. And I think it worked. I'm here. You know, I've been shot at. I've been on planes that have crashed. I've been in car accidents that should have killed me. I've had guns to my head since I was 12 years old. I've put my own gun to my own head. I shouldn't be alive. But, you know, the universe, God, has spoken and said, nope, Dave, you're going to live. And you're going to be a parent, and you're going to be a husband, and you're going to die one day exactly how you're supposed to die, right when you're supposed to, and it's going to be magical, and you are going to find that little piece of heaven. And this is what I wanted to talk on. What do I view as heaven and hell? If I told you I believe there is a physical heaven and a physical hell in which my soul will go to, I just don't see that happening. And I think I view the crossover from life to eternal life as a universal energy versus a physical being going to a gate and being admitted or falling through the gates of hell and being burned for the rest of your eternity.
Yeah, pretty black and white there.
Yeah,
although I do believe that I will be me, I will still be female, and so forth, and that there's a plan for me after this life that may involve other life.
I feel we're all connected. You said it earlier. You woke up frantic. I was frantic. I was already frantic. You and 2 other people reached out to me over the last 24 hours to check on me because I popped into your minds. And it's because I've been frantic. And you sense that. And to me, I think our energy scientifically cannot be created or destroyed. The energy that is here has always been here. We have always been here. We all come from Earth's dust, which is stardust. Like, that's what science says right now. And I think we can even relate that if you go back to the early days of the Bible where they talk about Adam and Eve and the early Genesis chapters, God created us. He created Earth. He created everything, right? If we want to believe that, go for it, even though I know there's some controversy out there as to whether it's mythology or not. I don't know. I don't think we're ever going to know. I think that, yes, the Bible has been written by man, but it's no different than keeping a journal entry. It's testament to
It's a testimony,
witnesses.
inspired witnesses, yeah.
By what they saw. We don't truly know who recorded those early pages. We just know that somebody did. There's no Sanskrit.
And that they were preserved, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's believed to be mythological. Cool, whatever. So be it. But there's still a purpose to it. It's a way for humans to understand and connect. It's a hook, but it's a good hook. And I say that comfortably because I don't think as human beings we would actually be able to comprehend what God really did. That's why we can't understand the vastness of space. Like, can you understand? Like, I just read an article yesterday on negative time. By the way, they said that wasn't possible. Now they say it's possible. Which
like
is
going back in time, kind of, sort of?
Yeah, like they found negative time. Like humans created time. We made time a thing.
Well, I think the sun and the moon and the stars, you can see in the creation where time became a thing for this planet. But it took me kind of a long time to conceptualize this that I still don't fully understand. But the idea that time is irrelevant when you die. With God, it's irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. And everything here is based on beginnings and endings, life, death, sun coming up, going down, getting out of bed in the morning, going back to sleep. It's a revolving... Everything is about time here, and you only have so much time. But even here, I have found in study and in practice, it's almost like everything you need to get done happens and it shouldn't have been able to get done. And you're wondering, how did that happen? I only had this much time. And yet, even that principle can occur for a human being when God needs it to. I guess when he needs you to do ABC and you don't have enough time to do it, he will make enough time for you to do that, if that's making sense. And I've heard many different testimonies of that. I've felt that in my life from time to time, not often, but where it's like something miraculous just happened and I don't know how to explain it. I think I've talked about this on another podcast, but with a sister who almost died. She was in the process of dying. Like she should have died. Horse was going down in the street, semi was coming, about to hit her. And she was like, this is it. My life is over. She could see it coming. A split second later, she found herself walking with the reins in her hands beside the horse, calm as could be, and the semi way down the street. And there's no way that should have ever been. It was like someone said, pause, moved a few things around, and then boop, continue.
Having been in a moment where I literally accepted my death, like I was done. Saw my death happening. I'm being vague because I don't want to talk about the details of the shooting. It is known to humans that stress causes us to hyperfixate on things. And we lose some of our senses. We lose sight or we lose smell. We lose something during stress. Your body can't overcome that experience because it's unnatural, but you're having a natural reaction to an unnatural event, as was in my case. And I somehow did not get run over in this event, even though I was already hit. No injuries. None. I was squished. Didn't hurt. My shoulders are jacked up. My hips are jacked up. My lower back's jacked up. My knees jacked up. My neck's jacked up. I've got a couple TBIs, I think.
But do you feel like something intervened? Something prevented that from being your death day?
Yeah, I should have been dead.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind I should have been dead. Several people there thought I did die. That's why they shot. They thought I was dead. They were expecting to pull my squished body out. One of them was in the car next to me. He said he thought he saw me go under. I might have, but I was definitely inside another vehicle. I can't explain it. And when I had to testify on that, it was hard because I'm like, I'm not sure.
Like it's just not matching up. The facts aren't.
It didn't match up, you know? There was enough witnesses that had saw what happened, and it made sense once people started putting it together, but that's not what I saw. And not what I felt. There's a reason I reacted the way I reacted and did what I did. My goal was to not die, and I didn't. I wasn't ready. And I realized it in the middle of that. It was a rough morning, too, because I had actually just read an article. One of our deputies had been killed that morning. And it was it was a bad day. I was reading it. Ugh, gives me chills.
I asked this of another military friend of mine. What was the hardest thing about being in the military? What makes it so traumatic for so many people? Her response was that for her, it was when you make a mistake that gets someone killed. Or that you think the what if I'd done this? Could it have kept them alive? If I had not done this or that, ruminating about potential mistakes, even if it maybe wasn't a mistake, but that you could have saved someone and you didn't.
That's a tough one. Everyone's traumas are unique.
Yeah.
Our experiences are unique, and I can't talk on other people's trauma because I wasn't there to experience it. And for years, I compared myself to combat vets. How do I have PTSD when I never saw combat? Because I didn't. I never saw combat. I saw people who saw combat right after that happened to them too. I saw the end result of combat, both from the living who got shot up and blown up but survived, and then the dead who aren't here anymore. And at the end of the day, I think it's just the individual and how they're able to process what they're going through. When it comes to combat, specifically, having not seen war combat, but having seen gunfights in the street, I guess I can call it, it's hard when we overcome these events. I don't know how to put it into words. It's just unreal. We all know we're going to die. But when that moment hits you and the chaos ensues and guns are firing and glass is shattering and metal's popping and people are screaming and bodies are convulsing and blood's squirting out, and it's different.
Yeah. Do you think that anyone can really understand without actually going through it? No.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Which is why I think veterans talking to each other is so important. That's something else I learned from another friend who said he came back from Iraq after he served for 10 years. And that there's just no one to talk to who understands. And you start recognizing that when you try to tell your stories, people just don't get it.
No, they can't.
So a lot of them stop talking, which is not good. They need to be connecting and talking. And so when these vets feel so alone that nobody understands, I wish that there was more being done on that front than what the VA is doing with just giving people drugs and sending them home. It's the connection. And I'm not experienced in this area at all, but just from observing, it seems like that's one of the biggest missing pieces.
Oh, man. It is impossible to fix us all. It is. There's just no way, because we're all too different. There's no pill that's going to fix this. There's no group therapy sessions. All we can do is hope that we can get through it. I feel lucky. I feel blessed. And I never say that. And I say blessed because I was able to push through my experiences and I had the will to live. There's so many cliche comments out there about will to live and having family and friends. But this goes back to, that's what I was going to talk about. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier about feeling alone. We feel alone. And you could be standing next to somebody you love and not have a single feeling. And I think
when you were talking about your wife, right? Yeah.
To know that they love me as much as they do and as unconditionally as they do, but yet I felt empty inside and alone. That's a hard place to be. You've been there. And with combat vets and law enforcement who have been in shootings, and mind you, law enforcement right now, there's a epidemic of suicides. Like almost every day I feel like I'm reading articles on cops who kill themselves because they can't get the treatment they need. They're afraid to because their bosses push them down.
They might be seen as unfit for the job, possibly.
Yeah, well, we are. There comes a point where we're afraid to lose the pension. That's a big part of it. A lot of these guys and girls don't want to lose pensions. I can't tell you how many people I talk to with blatant PTSD. I couldn't think of the word I wanted.
And they won't walk away. I talked about that in another podcast, of just this desire for security and that surety, that pension, whatever it is, versus leaning into what's not comfortable for you, that you don't know, but that God can show you how you can navigate the next chapter of your life. You need to leave. Like, there's a lot of times when you need to leave, but people will not leave because they want the pension or they wanted the health insurance and they're too scared and they can't trust that there is a power that is more powerful than them that will be able to not only get them through the next step, but it will be so much better if they'll just let go and trust that it's going to work out. So much better than they could possibly imagine, but they have to let go. And we live in this society where everybody wants that salary that's guaranteed instead of the adventure that you're talking about.
Well, I don't recommend my adventure to anyone.
Well, their adventure.
Yeah, I don't recommend this for anyone. I'm fortunate that my wife loves me enough to deal with my bullshit. We're your typical married couple. We barely fight, though. We're trying to get better with our communication. I have pushed her away.
69% of the problems that marital couples have are ongoing. I learned that this week. And
it doesn't change.
Yeah, you just keep rehashing the same things and stay in the course. Keep trying.
It's our individualness. Like, we're not going to marry someone just like us. We're going to marry someone that's got conflicting views and different behaviors. There's all those memes about one of you in the relationship fills the dishwasher like a Greek architect and the other one looks like a doorman.
Big source of contention, the dishwasher.
That's
not
me
for me
and my family.
But for others.
That's me and my family. It's like I just put all the dishes in the dishwasher and then my wife will come behind me and throw a dirty spoon in the sink. I'm like, babe, it's not on yet? And then she just looks at me. I'm like, I'll just do it. And then it becomes a thing. We're cordial. We're friendly. It's loving bickering, and I wouldn't change her out for the world. I've already switched wives once. I'm not doing that twice. I just want to make it to my death in peace. You know, my grandmother passed away a couple years ago on my sister's birthday, and my grandmother had a very, very hard life. She woke up one day, came downstairs, had a cup of coffee, and goes, you know what? I'm going to go take a nap. Never woke up. I can only be so lucky. She earned that death. Let me tell you what, though.
Yeah.
I'm so happy she died peacefully in her sleep. She was so peaceful that my aunt was sitting next to her and did not know she died. She tucked her in. That's how peaceful my grandmother's death was. That's all I want. That is beautiful. Yeah. I can't talk for other people when it comes to trauma because, I don't know. This is my journey. And I've met people who I honestly don't know how they have PTSD, but they do. I don't know what their traumas were. There's things that we don't tell each other. Like, who am I to judge you? You got PTSD, you got anxiety, you got depression.
Or
you know
things that you don't even remember. I mean,
there's that too.
In my case, I remember them vaguely now, but there were a lot of things that were building on the depression that I had hidden very far away back in deep in my brain. Didn't want to remember, I suppose. Children do that to protect themselves. There's a reason for that, but I would say if you struggle with PTSD and you don't know why, there's no condemning, like, what's wrong with you, you should be fine. Even if it's your genes, ancestral trauma that got passed down to you, it's a real deal.
It is.
It's not fake. You're not making it up, and there's a reason that you're struggling with it, but there's also divine reasons that are maybe hard to understand right now. But when you look back as you heal, you'll be grateful for the challenge. And I want to say that's the case for you. Have you been able to get to the point yet where you find gratitude in some of the challenges that you've experienced that's gotten you here?
For the first time, yesterday, I actually texted my trauma coach. She was like, that's a win if I've ever seen one. And I go, I know, right? Like, despite how bad of a day I had, I still had a level of peace about me. Like, even this morning, I was still kind of like, oh, well, 'tis life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a bad 'tis life. It was just like this is just how I deal with things. This is Dave not managing his time correctly.
You're in a place of acceptance and flow where you're like, okay, that didn't go very well. Moving on. Next.
Yeah, this sucks. Again. This is my life. My dog's got worms. My cat's got gut issues and puking everywhere. My kids are home from school because of a snow day. My wife works from home. And
just a little bit of chaos.
Here I am hiding out in my cubby hole / office / music room / writing room. I don't even know what I call this place. This is my
And you are writing a book right now. So just tell us a little bit. I know you didn't want to reveal anything, but just sell us a little bit on this upcoming book because I think it's going to be awesome.
To sell it, I'm going to talk a little bit about coming up to it. And don't worry if you're listening to this. It's not going to be as long-winded as the rest of my speeches. I wrote my first novel after having a conversation with my traditional Western psychologist about journaling. And I actually told him, no, I'm not going to write in a journal. I'm not going to say exactly how I said it. It's completely inappropriate and doesn't fit my... I don't want it staining my personality because I meant it. I'm not going to go there. Anyways, point is I said no. And then I ended up doing it anyways. At the time, I still drank heavily. I could easily put down a half a bottle of whiskey in a night. And I just wrote. And I started out as a short story. I called it Michael's Home. I wrote it in just a couple hours, and I never changed it. I did like a draft change. I edited it for the simpsons of like having the line and copy I just done, like punctuation, context, grammar, things like that. But I didn't change the story. I threw it up on Amazon just for fun. I wanted to sell it for like 99 cents, and it wouldn't let me do it any cheaper than like $2.99.
Hey, anybody can drop $2.99.
That wasn't the point.
I shouldn't say that. There are some people who maybe can't, but most people, if it's a value that they need to read it, then it's a sacrifice I would be willing to make.
Let me tell you what, it was hard to sell a single short story, but I loved it. I loved what I wrote, and I felt like, as amateur as that story was, it had potential. So I started doing a novel with my brother, and then he kind of fell off, and I ran with it. And I wrote this novel called 1,000 Miles to Nowhere. And I took a lot of my experiences that I had been experiencing up to that point that I didn't quite understand. I accepted them. I laughed at them because they were crazy, but I did not realize what it was leading up to. I did not realize that was the fuse that I was seeing. The fuse was sparkling, just working its way down, like super duper long fuse that's just working its way to the end where all the dynamite's sitting, like in a cartoon. I wrote a great book, zombie apocalypse, a lot of mental health stuff, and I threw a lot of things I did. For instance, there's a scene in it where my main character gets naked, runs outside with a gun, and starts screaming. I did that in a suburban neighborhood in San Diego. Wasn't snow on the ground when I did it, but it was 2 a.m. I thought somebody broke into the house, and I was going to kill him. I was outside, butt naked. I'm talking naked. And I had my gun in my hand, light on, and nobody was there. It was my imagination. 2:15 in the morning, I got so used to waking up at 2:15. That was my go time. That's when I woke up and stayed up because that's when the monsters were coming to get me. And by monsters, I mean the anxiety and depression and the panic attacks and the fake demons outside trying to break in. And I wrote this novel, and it took me 4 years, and I loved it. I still love that book. And you can get it on Amazon. Yes, shameless plug. Go to Amazon, type in 1,000 Miles to Nowhere, spell it out, 1,000 Miles to Nowhere, not A1000. It's my name, David Curfiss. But there's a big mental health aspect to that story. There's a love story mixed into the zombie apocalypse. There's PTSD mixed into the zombie apocalypse. There's death. Lots of death. So much death that somebody actually messaged me on Twitter back when I had a Twitter account. It was like, "Are you okay? That story was the saddest thing I ever read." I go, "Thank you. No, I'm not okay. Bye." And then I kind of couldn't write anymore. I was so bogged down mentally from stress. And then while I was writing that book, my other best friend died. And then I just started having a series of deaths, 4 or 5 a year. Cancer, suicide, heart failure from drug usage.
Common in the military.
Military, law enforcement.
Yeah.
The kids I grew up with. I had 2 people very close to me kill themselves a year apart from one another. I have a photo with me and both of them in it, and a couple other friends. It sucks when you look at a photo and half the picture is dead.
Yeah.
So
I suppose we all have to go through that eventually, but premature is just it's a shame. It's
hard.
sad.
Young people, 20s, 30s,
Yeah.
40s, all killing themselves, dying from cancer. One of my buddies was an Iraq war vet, died from cancer. Another one of my buddies was a Gulf War vet or Mogadishu vet. I can't remember. He died from cancer, amongst other things. It's just like every year. I had a friend die from COVID, of all things. And then I couldn't write. I couldn't think. There was too much stress. And that led me up to this moment on New Year's when a friend of mine who I've only known for like 6 months at the time comes and stays at my house, and we just hang out for 2 days. And he opened my head and he opened my mind up to the idea that I was killing myself because I was still running. And he was 100% true. So I did something a little drastic. And even my trauma coach was like, "Oh, shit, I didn't expect you to do all that." I'm like, this is how I roll right now. Let's just go with it.
Yeah.
I have this ideology that if I if I'm clogged and I don't know what's clogging, start from scratch. So I did. I deleted everything. I got rid of all my socials. I got rid of my podcast. I got rid of the novel. I took all the novels down. I got rid of everything. Took every day for what it was, a day. I woke up. I had my day. I went to bed. I have my next day. And I got to the point where I started having feelings. I started noticing I was able to communicate with the wife and kids. My purpose shift. I stopped looking for a way to change my time for money because the thought of me getting a job right now scares. Well, there's also an ego complex. I spent near 30 years of my life doing cool guy, fighting people, getting into shootings here and there, accepting death and accepting it as a time of day, and just kind of doing the work that no human is really supposed to do. And it has an impact on you. It's a necessary function in the society because there is balance. But I finally got to this point where my brain started letting me see what I wanted, and I realized I need a purpose. And that purpose became my family. And that was so hard for me to wrap my head around. It's a conundrum. So
if you're not watching this and you're listening, I'm smiling from ear to ear. Just like that is like you got it.
It's hard though. And it was something my daughter said. She asked me why I was so tired one day. And I told her my day. She goes, "You live a good life. That's a 14-year-old. She gets it." And it just the next morning I woke up, I was like, I got this. I sat down. I deleted the book I was working on for 8 years. I don't even know how many years I've been working on this book, but I deleted it and I started from scratch. And I took my time and I started writing this outline, and then I started creating a story setting, and then I started creating my characters, and then I wrote my first line, and then I wrote my last line, and then I wrote all my themes, sub-themes, plots, subplots. And then I started developing every single scene. And yesterday I did the final revision of my scene breakdowns. As it stands, I've got 60 scenes. Your traditional 3-act storyline. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Beginning, middle, end. I've got my hook, my introductions, I've got my plot points, I've got everything. And I sat down, and for the first time in years, I wrote. Like I really wrote. And it was so good and cathartic. And I reread it, I was like, that's what I want. I would love to give you guys the theme statement. And something I want to point out is I'm not going to self-publish this book. This book may or may not see the light of day. It depends on if I can get it picked up by a publishing company. So everything I did on my own. And this is the first time I'm going to be pursuing publication. But I've called the working title is called The Lies We Tell Ourselves. And to kind of keep myself on track, I found a proverb that embodied my theme. And the proverb is, among life's hardest lessons is learning to let go of what was never meant to stay. And for me, that's trauma response. We hold on to these traumas and we don't let them go because we use them as protection and a defense mechanism. And we're supposed to let them go. Like, it happened, we process it, let it go. I never did that. I'm doing it now.
But we are learning.
But we're learning. This is how I'm learning. My main theme is compassion for self-compassion, however you want to word it. And that goes hand in hand with the proverb. Not allowing trauma to define ourselves. So how is this going to make a cool post-apocalyptic story? I'll tell you. I can't tell you the plot because that'll give away the story. But I will give you my theme statement and my USP, the unique selling point. And the USP is something that writers have to create if they want to sell the book to a publishing company. This, mind you, it's superficial. Both of these are superficial. The USP is this: a powerful tale about a man whose traumatic past drives him to make destructive decisions, forcing him to confront the truth that healing requires facing the very pain he has tried to outrun. But will it be too late by the time he figures out the source of his problems? The theme statement is used in conjunction with the USP. The Lies We Tell Ourselves is a novel about a man trapped by his past. His distorted view of the world shapes his every decision. Little does he know, the truth within can never be outrun. Narrated through the eyes of friends, family, and his self, this deeply emotional story reveals the hardest life lessons are often the ones we struggle to accept.
I love it.
That's it.
So, I mean, foundational truths there that can change anyone's lives. I know we hear it, but when we know it, it changes everything.
It does.
We've got to figure out a way to make this book available, even if I
Well,
publish it for you.
I'm not going to
I'm Aquarius.
Hey, if you want to open up a publishing company and push it out there, feel free. But I'm definitely going to spend a few months trying to get an agent, and I'm going to start my next book. Everything I write is mental health advocacy based. It has to be to me. Like, I can't not.
Yeah.
But I also have the dark side that I love to touch on, and for me, that's the post-apocalypse. And before I let you go, I do want to explain why I love the apocalypse so much. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by violence and destruction. I think most little boys tend to be. We enjoy things blowing up and whatnot, but I was very fascinated by it. But I was always looking for a way out. I didn't like being home. It was uncomfortable for me. I might not have been getting punched or beat, but it was hard. It was volatile. Volatile. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. You never knew what you were going to get with my mom and my stepdad. You don't know if my stepdad was coming down off a heroin fix and was going to lose his mind, or if my mom was frazzled and didn't know how to respond to you when all you needed was a yes or no, and she starts screaming at the top of her lungs to shut up, I can't think, you know. I hated being home. So I would leave the house before anyone was up, and I wouldn't come home until everyone was gone. And while I was in the woods playing, I pictured myself in a world where no one else existed. I pictured survival of a child. And that's actually how Michael's Home came about. It's about a little boy trying to figure out why he is the way he is. He doesn't realize the world is gone. He just knows his mom left him. And that some mean people are chasing him. But he doesn't know why. And that's kind of how I felt. I never understood why I got treated the way I did. Being told your entire life that you're not going to make anything of yourself. You're just like your family. Doesn't feel good. I knew we were broke. I used to go to the store with $100 food stamps, buy a 25-cent piece of gum, and give the cash, because they gave you cash back, to my mom, so she could buy heroin and crack for my stepdad and booze for the party that they're going to have. But you walked into my house, you weren't going to find meat in the freezer. You were going to get spoons with burn marks on the bottom of them and maybe an egg. I don't know. I feel like I cooked eggs a lot. My mom did. Not to poo-poo my mom too much. She did love me. I know that. I know that. But I don't think she knew how. I grew up in a different environment, but that was my home. So that's where I got my creativeness from. That's why I love the apocalypse. It's a safe place for me. I can be myself there, and it doesn't make it hurt. It's not contemporary world. So for me, everything is post-apocalypse because the world's already gone. There's no hurt. So to me, that's the only way I could do it. That's my escape.
Yeah,
So,
that makes a lot of sense. Very cool. I love how you're able to capture it in a way that is healing for you rather than more hurtful, right? Because if you were to tell your story, it might just stir things up, be like too much pain. But if you can tell a story in an apocalyptic world, you kind of separate yourself from it a little bit, enough to
you detach.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's so
my trauma
cool.
response. That's how I coped. I think
that's amazing that you are able to do it at all, you know, because some people just avoid completely. So thank you so much for sharing so much of these very vulnerable stories with us today about your book. And I am really looking forward to seeing the next developments in your life, because it seems like in just this year and a half, and even you said like yesterday, a month ago, I'm like, man,
It's
this
new.
guy's developing fast. Like, talk to you in a month or a year from now, you're going to be a new David. And then after that, a year from then, you will be a new David. And I think that's all of us. But when you see that escalating or just going very quickly for someone, it's really fun to watch. And I'm really enjoying watching you. And I just think you are a stellar example of hope. You're a warrior. I want to say you are a spiritual and a physical warrior. And I'm grateful for you in my life. Is there anything else you want to say before we end today? Any last words that you want to say to our audience?
If I had to end this with one short final note, I would say this. Don't let your fears of other people's perceptions drive your direction. Do what you need to do for you. And if you feel that that means dedicating your life to the pursuit of God, so be it. If that means dedicating your life to your family, so be it. If that means dedicating your life to a job, so be it. Do what you want to do. Don't lie to yourself about it either. That's a hard thing to go on. Be honest. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't. It just doesn't. I lived my life trying to impress other people, and it killed me.
Yeah.
Be true to yourself, because if you're not, no one else is. You have to trust that you know what is best for you. Don't search for material comforts. Don't search for job satisfaction. Search for contentment.
At peace.
At peace. My wife told me a couple months ago, all I want is you to be content. I literally woke up the next morning and said, all I'm going to focus on is being content. And guess what? It worked. I started finding peace in my life because I was being true to myself. I wasn't letting other people push me in directions. I got pushed over my entire life.
Nobody likes being pushed either.
No. So do what's best for you. If that means quitting your job, losing your pension, and I know that sounds scary because I didn't want to lose my pension, you got to do what's best. Don't let it kill you earlier than you're supposed to die. We're all going to die sometime. It'll come. Don't let it be by your own hand. Don't succumb to outside pressure. Be true to yourself, regardless of the situation. Have faith in yourself. If you can't find it in God, have faith in yourself that you will get through it because something somewhere is looking over you.
Yeah.
And
I would
that's where the connection comes from.
Don't look for validation from other people.
Yes.
When you know, remember, don't forget what you know for yourself. And don't let other people talk you out of it.
Exactly. And I was easily talked out of things. So that's it. That's all I want to say. Be true to yourself. Follow your heart. Don't listen to your brain. Follow your heart. And if this feels clogged, there's a reason for that. Yeah. That's it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, David. You're incredible. I know there's going to be people who are going to listen to this and benefit from it. So thank you again for being here today. And so this is it. We're at the end of our podcast episode today. I am your host, Jennifer Stirling-Campbell, and you are listening to the Overcome Depression podcast.
Later, guys.
If you are new to this podcast, please go watch all of the hashtag introduction videos first, and then consider downloading the Overcome Depression workbook. Links in the description. The content in this podcast is based on my own personal beliefs, is for informational purposes only, and is not intended to substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please refer to the full legal disclaimer in the description.